What's up everybody, it's Owen here from Devil's Watches, and today we're going to get into a video of why watches cost what they cost. So the main question you get when you tell someone you're into watches, they kind of say, yeah, but why would you spend that much money on a watch? You know, why is that watch worth this much and this watch worth this much? So today we're going to get in why some watches cost so much and why some watches don't. Before we do that, please subscribe, ding the little bell, give us a like, put down your comments, whatever you think is the best watch for value that you know of, and then we'll get into the video. So let's see why they cost so much. The first one, and which I think most people can agree on, is material. What is the watch made out of? If a watch is made out of gold, platinum, white gold, rose gold, you can justify why it costs more because it's a precious metal. There's only so much of it in the world. It makes sense why that costs more. But where people do get a little bit confused is when it comes to stainless steel, or what some companies say is stainless steel, or their alloys. There's different grades of stainless steel. So there's like the steel pipe that you see on a building site, to whatever the steel that Rolex use in all their bracelets and their cases. So when you're looking for your watch, make sure to kind of look out for 316L is a good grade of steel. Stainless steel for your watches. Some of the lower ones are 201 or 304, but if the watch brand is saying that the bracelet is 316L, that's usually one of the higher levels of steel. So that's one thing to look out for, and that's one way that prices, even on a stainless steel watch, can kind of vary of how much they cost because of the level or the quality of the steel they're using. Number two is the crystal, or what some people call the glass on the watch, this bit. So when you're buying a watch, the things you need to look out for, and why some watches are a higher value, is they use a better crystal. So most high-end watches would use a sapphire crystal. In saying that, it doesn't mean that if a watch has a sapphire crystal that it should be worth a certain amount of money, or you won't get $100 watch with a sapphire crystal. You will, but it's just one thing that ups the value. So a lot of the lower end watches would have like a plexiglass or a kind of plastic, and these would scratch easy, while your sapphire crystal is scratch resistant, so it will stand the test of time better. So that's number two in differentiating between a high-end watch and your more low-end watch. Number three, like anything in the world, the finishing. And I think if you're buying a watch, if you're ever going to spend a large amount of money on a watch, or even a couple of €100 on a watch, you're probably best off trying to hold that watch, maybe not the actual watch you're buying, but another one of the watches that someone has, a friend has, or you came across, just so you can actually see the level of finishing, and does it stick to what it says on the internet or the pictures. Because it's very hard, especially these days with photoshopping and what people can do with the pictures online, where you see one watch and it looks pristine, and then you actually get it, and I know a lot of the cheaper watches say like the date window might not line up, or the dial might be off center, or you know, little simple things that you won't see in the picture, or can be brushed out in a picture, and then when you get it, the bracelet looks solid, and then you get it and it feels like a feather. So you really need to get to understand the finishing, and it's probably one of the biggest difference between a watch at this level and a watch at this level is the finishing. So if you're going to ever spend a lot of money on a watch, make sure you hold it, make sure you actually get to look at it and see that everything lines up, everything feels smooth, there's no gaps. It's just like anything. If you're getting a work done in your house, or a carpenter's in your house, like they can all cut the same, they can all do the same, but it's how they finish off the job that really sets them apart. So that's number three on why two watches will be so different in price. Next up, we have movement, which is one of the biggest things that people talk about when they're buying watches. A lot of people would look down on a quartz watch, say, oh, it's quartz, it's cheap, you throw it away, it's not worth servicing. But then there is some quartz watches, like a lot of tags are quartz. Rolex had a quartz watch, which is one of my favorite looking watches. I'll put a picture up there. So it is a great thing to go by, that quartz are a lower standard watch and they're a lot cheaper to produce. And in fairness to quartz watches, they're better at keeping time, they're more accurate than your manual watches. So but when it comes to movement, it's really down to what you want out of a watch. Some people that would buy a watch, buy it purely as a kind of engineering mind frame where they want to see it work, they want to know how it works, they want to know that there's wheels moving inside the watch that's making it do what it's do. And then there's other people that want to wear a watch, and if they want to take it off for a few days, when they pick that watch back up, they don't want to set times or wind it or do anything or service the watch. They just want something that, oh, the battery's gone, I'll change the battery, I'm good to go again. But the level of the movement that is in a watch is one of the main things where price differ. The same way with a car, the engine in a car, the engine in a Ferrari will get you from A to B, the same way an engine in a Ford will get you from A to B. But it's the way it gets you there. It's the level of experience and time and passion that went into that engine that makes it stand apart. So there's really, when you're breaking down movements, there's two kind of movements. There's your mechanical movements, which is your automatics movements, which charge themselves on movement. So you see on the back of a lot of watches, you see like a moon shape, like a rotor wheel that spins, and when you move your wrist, that gets the watch going. Or if you see, sometimes people would have watch winders beside their bed, so they put the watch on that at night and it keeps spinning overnight, so the watch never stops. And then you have hand wound watches, which would be like what your granddad had. The first kind of wrist watches would have been wound, so you twist the crown to wind the watch, and you'll get a day, maybe a few days out of it. Depends what the power reserve is. And then you have your quartz, which came in the 80s, and what people thought was going to be the new thing in watchmaking, that no one was going to ever use the old technology. And a lot of companies stood their ground, stayed strong, didn't give in to quartz. Rolex kind of did, and they made their Oyster Quartz watch, and which I love. I think it's a beautiful looking watch. They tested the water, but then they realized that what they do is more of a passion, and you wouldn't be able to charge the prices you charge if you had a quartz movement in them. So they were kind of thinking of the money too as well. But yeah, that's one of the main difference now. It's the heart of the watch. So a lot of watches, what they have is, you hear of an in-house movement. So an in-house movement is where would be it could be a quartz, but mostly isn't. Would be a mechanical or automatic movement that is made in-house by that company. Only they make this movement and no one else uses it. It's theirs. Why? You have a lot of big companies like ETA that make these movements that a lot of watches would wear. So a lot of watches around your 300, 500 euro price point will have similar movements in all the watches that they just buy off the shelf, put into their watch. Why these movements are more expensive than the quartz watches, they're not nowhere near as expensive as having an in-house movement. So that's one of the areas where the main difference in price comes. So on to the next. This is kind of a lead on from movements, but one of the main things that make prices go up is their complications. So in watches, well, in the normal world, a complication usually means something bad, like, oh, that's not going to work, or it's a pain. But in watchmaking, and watchmakers just love hard work and trouble. They love complications. So what a complication is like another function that the watch can do. So your date window is a complication. A chronograph is a complication. A minute repeater is a complication. A moon phase is a complication. So the more movements that can be put into a watch, the more effort it takes. So the higher price they demand. And some movement or some complications be more expensive than, like, any watch can put a date movement in. It's not going to change the world. But some of the minute repeaters, and when you start getting into stuff like that, it's you can't buy these things off the shelf. You know, these are handmade movements that are put in the best of watches. So how many complications? And then there's like the grand complications that Patek make, that have 20 something different complications in one watch, and that you can't put a price on that, because it's just the level of skill they have in it, that there's only a few people in the world that can do these kind of things. So, and they take years and years to make. So you can't say that, oh, it's too expensive. What price do you put on perfection is one of them things. But yeah, the minute you start going up into your more high-end complications, that's another reason why some prices are higher than others. And it's only when you get into watchmaking and looking at these things, you realize, oh, how difficult it is to do something that when you look at the watch itself, you don't notice how much effort has gone into that. You just take it as granted as, oh, it's just another movement they took off the shelf and they put it in and it's done. But it doesn't work like that. So complications are, When you get up to that level, so you have your base level watches, then you get up to your kind of couple of $1,000 watches, and then from here, this is where complications come in, and you can spend as much money as you want buying watches with a lot of high-end complications. And then one of the main things with anything you buy, not just watches, your phone, your clothes, anything you do, it's the brand. There's two stamps that matter on a watch. One is the brand stamp, the name they put on it, and then the second is the Swiss made stamp. So if a watch has a Swiss made stamp on it, it means that a large majority of its production has been done in Switzerland. So it kind of gives it that next level of a higher quality, that if a watch has that stamp on it, it means it hits certain standards. But which was a big thing in the past and still is, and a lot of, you'll see it on any watches, Swiss made, and then on older vintage watches it might just have Swiss with two T's on each side. But as time moves on, we're kind of seeing a lot of other companies and countries come in and build watches that are at the same level, if not higher, than the Swiss made watches. So Japan's getting big with their Grand Seikos. Then there's a few German brands that are really up in their game. So maybe in a few years, 20, 30 years, maybe the Swiss made stamp won't have as much influence as it does now. But at the moment, if you buy a watch with Swiss made on it, there's a good chance that it is, you're buying that stamp, you're buying the quality that was made in Switzerland, with the majority was made in Switzerland, and that has hit certain standards before it was brought out. So that's the Swiss made stamp. And then it's a brand stamp. If it says Rolex, you're going to buy it. The same way if a car says Lamborghini, you want it. If your clothes says whatever, Nike, Adidas, Reebok, you want that rather than the bland no name t-shirt. So it's just one of them things. And people, you can give out that some companies overcharge for their name. Why there is companies, in fairness, that undercharge for their name. There's a lot of great brands there that are undercharging for what their brand is worth. But and then obviously some people take it to a new level where they're bringing out a lot of fashion watches. I think do this where you could have two similar watches, one says a certain name on it and it's worth $200, and then the same watch that's probably coming from the same factory is selling at $80 with someone else's name on it. So some brands take it too far, and then other brands have earned it and deserved it, like some of the companies that are around 100 years. If you build a brand or a company over 100 years, you deserve to get extra money for that stamp. If you can last the test of time, go through all these recessions and you're still going, on which 100% you deserve to charge that. And then finally, the last thing is limited editions, or some companies, now this is more on the higher end, when it gets to a certain level that your watches are so complicated that you can only make so many a year. A lot of the watchmakers themselves, or this kind of smaller micro brands, they can only produce so many watches at a time. There's only so many watches they can make a year. It's not like some of these big companies that are 1 million watches a year that they can make. There's no limit to how many watches they can make. A lot of watches, and a lot of companies do it on purpose. Like, I know if you want to get a sports Rolex, you're on a waiting list because they're kind of holding back demand to always keep that inflated level of they're hard to get. So it all depends. And some people do a lot of limited. There's some brands that just are limited edition after limited edition of the same watch. But then there is some brands that kind of hold themselves back. They don't produce as much as they should to keep this supply high. And then there is other companies, the cheaper end watches, that just, they don't care. They'll get as many watches out as they can sell. So that's another thing where you have to kind of go, there's only so many of these watches being made. So you're not going to bump into the guy down the street wearing the same watch as you. You're not going to just buy a new one of these watches when, if something happens to the watch, or you lose the watch, or it's stolen, you can't just go to the shop the next day and say, okay, I want that watch again. It's not there. It takes time. So you're paying for the prestige. You're paying for the knowing that you're one of the only people with this watch that bought it that year, rather than if it's another brand and your watch breaks and you say, well, I'll go to the shop, I'll spend another $100. Boom, new watch, no one knows. So yeah, that's one of the main things. Do I agree with it? No, I think you should make as much watches as you can. I know sometimes these watches are too hard, and especially at the higher end, there's only certain people that can make these watches. So even if you wanted to produce double your production, you can't, because you don't have the skilled people there to do it. So yeah, that's the main reasons why some watches cost $50 and some watches cost $50,000, $2 million, $10 million. It's up to you. If you have the money to spend, go ahead, spend it. If you don't, I'm not going to say, if you're only making this much money, you're not going to spend your month's wage on watches unless you're some good people. But yeah, just whatever. Every watch has its benefit, but just try to look out for the specs. You know, you want a good steel, you want a decent crystal, you want an average movement, maybe an ETA or an SW or whatever you can get. Complications, if you're into complications, you're going to spend money. They're expensive. And then make the stamp doesn't mean anything really. It's find a company you relate to and you want to support, and then just go with that. But yeah, they're the main reasons why watches differ, and I hope I answered a few questions. If you have any questions below, please put them in the comments and I'll follow up with them again. And as always, please subscribe, hit the bell. Gracias.